Hi, listeners. What a windy road we took with this next show, but it was so great. My guest is Hersch Wilson. He's a 30-year veteran volunteer firefighter and EMT with the Hondo Fire Department in Santa Fe County, New Mexico. He's written this incredible book called Firefighter Zen, and that alone made me go, I need to have this guy on my podcast. But we don't know each other, so we were being very careful about, well, we don't want to talk politics and maybe offend each other, and we want to be polite with each other in this conversation, and it turned out, fantastic and wonderful to navigate that together with someone who's really terrific. So again, please welcome my next guest, Hersch Wilson.
I wanna try and take in all the highs, embrace them for more than a moment's time. I want you, please don't move when I push you away. I know I contradict myself some days, but will you ride the lows with me?
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I am your host, Kristin Sunanta Walker. Our goal is to help discussions about mental health be a regular part of your daily life, no different than discussions about physical health. Mental illness can be a topic of discussion under the umbrella of mental health, along with so many other topics. This show is the original program on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com. Our network of shows are played in over 180 countries and cover more topics under that umbrella than you can possibly imagine. We were talking about mental health long before it became cool and popular to talk about, and thank goodness it has become so popular. We have incredible guests, advocates, patients, experts, people. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy our intro music, a song named Lows, written by Aubrey Toon. You can find her music at www.aubreytoone.com.
That night when I started praying, I cried, will you ride the lows with me? Will you ride the lows with me? When I'm down, my vision gets blurry.
Hersch, thank you so much for coming on Mental Health News Radio.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I am too. And I'm excited, of course, to speak with you. But I also, as I've said this to you privately, am in love with the name of your book, Firefighter Zen. I just think that is the coolest thing ever.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I cannot take credit for it, but thank you anyways.
Yeah, you had said, well, I don't know if it's a story you want to tell, but you had told me privately how that name came to you, and that person that came up with it is brilliant.
I know she was. And I have daughters, and we were just tossing names back and forth. And one of my daughters said, "How about Firefighter Zen?" And I just said, "Yeah, that's brilliant." And then I talked to my editor. And he was hesitant at first at New World Libraries, and then he said the rest of the staff really liked it, and then he said it's stuck. So that's what we're going with. So yeah.
I have to ask you
Sure.
about what you feel about. Well, I guess that's an okay way to ask it, because obviously you're going to feel sad and compassionate about it, but the amount of firefighters that are, in the line of danger every day with what's going on in California, my home state.
Oh, yeah. I just think about those guys every day, those guys and gals. It's I can't imagine the level of stress, the size of the fires. I mean, we're in New Mexico, and we have smoke from the California fires drifting over us.
Yeah.
So those are huge fires, and they are doing, I know they're understaffed. I know they're exhausted, and we're thinking about them all the time.
That's the thing that's so difficult. I have friends, long-time friends that, still live there, and just, they know, just call me whenever. I don't care if it's 2 a.m,
Yep.
call me, and they're just devastated. I mean, we sent two of our friends, one in Oregon that was dealing with fires there, and then one in California, just gift cards to go get food, to go
Yep.
hotel points for Hilton Hotel, that
Thank
kind
you
of
so
stuff.
much.
Just to whatever you can do, which most everybody is really being careful about their finances right now with everything that's going on. So talk about, what made you want to be a first responder?
Well, yeah, it's a complicated story. So, I never watched 911 or rescue when I was growing up. That just was not in my bailiwick. And I went to high school. I went to college at Colorado College. I quit college to be a dancer, and I was a ballet dancer for 10 years. And then that's where I met my wife, Lori. And after that, we both moved to New Mexico for work. And Lori got a job at a conference center called the Pecos River Learning Centers outside of Santa Fe. And one day, a woman tripped and broke her ankle. And there was nobody with any medical training there, and no one knew first aid. So they called the ambulance, they transported the woman. But Lori was so frustrated that she immediately went home and signed up for an emergency medical technician class. And that's about a 6-month class. And at the end of it, the instructor said, Lori, if you want to keep your skills sharp, why don't you join a volunteer fire department? So she liked that idea, but what Lori heard was, why don't we join the fire department? Not just her, but me. And again, I had never heard of a volunteer fire department. I did not know what that was. I could not picture myself breaking down doors during a fire, and all the men in my family had this thing about blood and gore. So I wasn't enthusiastic about the idea. However, what she did was she dragged me to the first meeting where we met the fire department, and it was in the bay of the building, and there was tables and chairs, and there was about 15 people there. And they were passing around a picture of an accident, a car crash they had just responded to the last couple of days. And unfortunately, a man had died, and he was still in the vehicle, and they were passing the picture around. And Lori was immediately intrigued by what we call the mechanism of injury. And then they passed the picture to me of this man who was deceased, and I almost passed out because I just could not handle that kind of stuff. And she just turned to me and said, well, Hersch, maybe you could just learn to drive the trucks. So she was very enthusiastic, jumped right in, started the training, and dragged me along. And it took me another couple of months to say, yeah, this is important, and this is what has been missing in my life. So we joined, and that's how we started.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's interesting. You sort of got dragged to it, and then you finally went, okay, maybe you don't have to drag me anymore.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, you have seen all of the wide range of emotions that come from this kind of a public service life and experience. How, obviously Firefighter Zen has something to say, just even in the title, it's obvious, how do first responders, how do firefighters deal with what they have to deal with? Because, as you say, and maybe it's the foreword, or I'm reading it on your website, as you talk about, firefighters are trained to be fully in the moment, present to the heartbeat, the life at hand. And yet that's a lot of adrenaline and in your face stuff that you then have to try to figure out, how do I be Zen about this?
I think of firefighting and Zen as different roads to a couple of the same conclusions. And you learn this quickly as a firefighter that all we have right now is this moment in time. We're not, it passes over, and as every firefighter will tell you, stuff happens, and stuff can happen out of the blue. And you learn quickly that there is you can't predict the future, because it's unpredictable. And I think what we're going through now as in the pandemic is, if you think about it, everybody had plans in March. They had their calendars laid out, where they were going to take vacations, what job they were going to apply for, all that kind of stuff. And everybody threw the calendars away in March, right? Because we knew that the future was unpredictable. Well, in reality, that is what life is. It's unpredictable. It is not guaranteed. It's not promised to us. And both Zen, the practice of Zen, and being a firefighter teach that. So you learn immediately to really live in the moment. I think the other important lesson that firefighters and Zen both teach is about service to others. That we live in this society and we practice this illusion, this lie, that the key to happiness is around status, it's around material goods, it's around wealth. And it's like the King Midas myth, where if everybody recalls this from their childhood, Midas was given the power to turn everything he touched into gold. And he went ahead and did that. And then he accidentally touched his daughter who he loved, and she turned into gold, right? And I think we get infatuated with the idea that that's how we find happiness, is through material things. What firefighting teaches is that the road to joy, to be really fulfilled and feel joy, is by serving others, is by taking care of others. And this is also a common theme in almost all the major religions, that is taking care of others where we find happiness and joy. And I always use the story of the great teacher, Jesus Christ. He didn't stay in the temple and preach. He went out and washed the feet of lepers. And I think that's wherever you are in the religious spectrum, it's a great story about why we're here, to serve others and to realize that there's pain and there's suffering in the world, and our job is to help ameliorate that.
Absolutely. I think about that, especially with what's going on with a lot of things in the world right now, including the pandemic. I think a lot about the mission is mental health awareness for my network. It doesn't matter, because I've definitely had people say, how can you have this person who believes this be a part of your network? I've had all that kind of stuff come at me in 6 different ways to Sunday. And I always go back to everyone deserves to have the best of mental health possible. Doesn't matter what their politics are, their religion, no religion, what race they are, whether they're from Mars, whether they're male or female, those are just details that don't really matter in the big picture. And that's how I can speak to someone that I truly don't agree with at a core level, but still be able to do something side by side with them in service to others.
Exactly. And I think when we think of being kind and on one of the things you're taught immediately as a firefighter, and it's hard, is that you have to let go of judgment.
Yeah.
You have to let go of your righteousness in order to serve people, because Robin Williams said before he died, and he was one of my just heroes, was that be kind always, because everybody's got a story. Everybody's got something going on. And being a firefighter, you really learn that. And you have to respect that. It can be whether it's and we had a patient a number of years ago, and he was living in a home alone. He was an ex-cop. He had PTSD. He had a lot of mental health issues. He was a hoarder. And it's real easy to go in and judge those kinds of people, right? And think, well, I'm better than they are. But I think as a first responder, you learn there but the grace, go I. And we need to, and the people that I started working with and learning from were just so non-judgmental. They go in, they take care, they're kind, and then they go about their business. And that was a real shock to the system when you come from a society that's extremely judgy, right? And
Right.
and always trying to put people in boxes and say, well, this is what that person is, and he or she is homeless, he or she is a drug addict, he or she
Right.
is a drunk driver, right? When we're all more than that. And so suspending judgment, especially now when people are suffering so much for a variety of reasons. We have. I don't think and maybe you probably know more about this than I, but I feel like we're in the beginning of a mental health crisis.
Oh my gosh,
in
yes.
this country.
Absolutely. I was telling somebody today, if my friends, for the most part, are counselors. Apparently, I need a lot of people in the mental health profession in order to just live my life.
Right. Man, it's Monday. It must be Jill. Right.
Right.
Oh, Tuesday, that's Bob. Right.
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 And to that, I'm not a counselor, but I can speak the language. And so it's very safe, I think, for, my psychiatrist friends, psychologists, social workers. It's very safe to call me because I'm not a colleague doing the same thing that they do, but I understand the lingo. So it's a safe space to come and say, I have quadrupled the patient load. My practice in terms of suicidal ideation, substance abuse, eating disorders, is up 300%.
Yeah.
But I can't even function in my own life half the time. And here I'm supposed to help somebody else. And it's a safe space to go and do that.
Right.
But I think about that and I go, my God, what is happening?
I just did a presentation for an organization called the National Volunteer Fire Council on preventing suicides in the first responder population. And we talked about a couple of things, that you're more likely as a firefighter to be killed or to die by suicide than you are, what we call a line of duty death. And that's been true for the last 3 years. So it's a significant problem, and it just reflects the national trend. And I think the other thing was going on prior to the pandemic, I don't even remember, what 2019 was, but back then, there was this idea of the deaths of despair, of people who just felt that everything has passed them by, that they have no chance, that they have no place to go. And the opiate addiction and suicide and people eating and drinking themselves to death has been is kind of an untold tragedy. And we see the opiate stuff and the attempted suicides a lot on our department. I mean, it's out there and it's rampant, and it just goes to societal issues that it's hard for one individual or one area of expertise to manage.
Well, that and yes, absolutely. But also, I mean, this was a year ago. So pre-pandemic, not pre-political stuff, but at the epic level that it seems to be at right now. And I was sitting with a firefighter who had, tried to kill himself. And it was such an amazing show that I had him on, and what a lovely human being. And he said, people have to understand, we used to get calls and we knew that by the address, okay, you better suit up a little extra because that's a bad neighborhood. He goes, now with the opioid epidemic, every neighborhood is a bad neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's like, I miss the days where, we're going to that neighborhood. Okay, that's somebody's kitten got stuck in a tree. He's like, that is not the calls we get anymore.
No, it's absolutely changed. And I think when you think of the kind of building blocks of where we are, that are people are really anxious. They're worried about paychecks and food. They're worried about getting sick. They're worried about politics. And that just becomes this ginormous weight that's on our shoulders. And then you put kind of the day-to-day stressors on top of that, and it just becomes too much. And besides, my kids are grown, so it takes me a second to remember that I think one of the biggest stressors is your kids are not in school, and the homeschooling thing has at least mixed grades, if you will. And now it looks like we're going back into more lockdowns. I mean, it's just hard for people to take. And I think there's a couple things that we need to kind of step back and think about as individuals in difficult times that are really important. And we can talk about that if you want.
Hey listeners, a quick but important notice for all the shows that we'll be doing for our first responders. In 2018, the number of police officers, firefighters, EMTs, and veterans, anyone who's considered a first responder, who died of suicide was greater than the combined total killed in the line of duty. More attention is being paid, but help is often elusive. Even with more available resources, those who are first in line to help us, actually asking for help for themselves, that can be the hardest thing for them to do. Mental Health News Radio Network is working with Stepstone Connect to give voice to our incredible first responders. Stepstone Connect is an organization born of the belief that accessibility and confidentiality will eliminate traditional barriers to treatment. Privacy and the peace of mind that comes with it, combined with easy, everywhere access, underlines Stepstone's mission and treatment philosophy. It's simple. With access to the internet and a device with a camera, you're a click away from leading mental health clinicians who specialize in the treatment of PTSD and other trauma-related injuries for first responders and their families. If you or someone you care about is struggling, please don't let another day pass before discovering what Stepstone can do. Stronger connections, everywhere access, stepstoneconnect.com. You can find out more by going to their website, stepstoneconnect.com, or call 800-495-3761. Now back to the show. I know that you've got 6 key strategies for thriving in the face of difficulty. So can you share a couple of them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing is, and this is something that firefighters learn. It's being able to discipline our thinking, and by that I mean 90%, 85%, 95% of the calls we go on are not what we consider as first responders true emergencies, right? They're not life and death calls. They're not a house burning down calls. They are emergencies to the people who call 911, but to us they're not. And they're problems we solve. We do it compassionately. We handle the problems, but they're not emergencies. We consider emergencies something that's life and death, something that somebody's severely injured, or it's a fire, and a big fire. So we need other language to help us. So what I think about is there's 2 classes. There are true emergencies, and then I was thinking about what other word can we use to describe the other stuff, the minor stuff that happens all the time. And this has become my mantra, and it's the word inconvenience. 90% of the stuff we see are inconveniences to us, right? It is somebody fell, somebody got locked out of their house, a minor car accident. Those things are not the end of the world. They're inconveniences. Mm-hmm. And I think the same ratio applies to us in the real world, that most of the negative things that happen to us are not life and death. They're inconveniences. Somebody cutting you off on the interstate, being late for a meeting, all those things, even now, are not true emergencies. They're inconveniences. And if we can learn to say to ourselves, well, this is not an emergency, this is an inconvenience, I think it calms us down, and we can be more creative, and we can solve the problem. So that's kind of the first thing. It's kind of disciplining our thinking, like firefighters do, because we can't be all excited and ramped up and adrenalized and go into a complex car crash and solve problems. We'll kill each other.
Right.
So we have to be relaxed and calm and kind of take a breath and work together. So that mental discipline is really important. And that's something we can all learn. It's that old stories that We rarely listen to the stuff that we're saying to ourselves, right?
Mhm.
But
True.
but the voice in our heads is crazy. It's nuts. It's saying things that you would never in your life say to another person, but it's just like unedited in our head. We have to learn to control that voice. So that's kind of the first thing, that probably the most important thing, is that ability to discipline our thinking. And if you look at the pandemic, a lot of people are going through tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
It's unequivocal, right? Unequivocal. And they're losing jobs. They don't know where their next paycheck's coming from, if ever.
They're afraid of dying.
They're afraid of dying, right? Legitimate cause for stress. But a lot of the other stuff is not that big a deal, right? They're inconveniences. And we have to learn to say, I get it. It's an inconvenience. I can get through this. We will get through this. And I think that's just hugely important right now. And I try to keep it in perspective. I think keeping perspective is really important. And I talk about my grandparents, both my grandmother and my grandfather were born in 1900. And they went through, as teenagers, my grandfather fought in the First World War. And then they had the flu epidemic. And then they had Prohibition. My grandfather sold liquor. So that was a big blow. And then the Depression, and then the Second World War, then the communist scare, and then the polio epidemic, which everybody's forgotten about, on and on and on. And they got through all that, right? They got through all of that because they were tough and they stuck together. And we can learn a lot because every family out there has the same story, if they look back generationally, about their family being tough and resilient and being able to get through a lot of stuff. And I think we need to remember that we're them. We share their genes, we share their stories, and we can be inspired by that. So that's kind of the other building block. And then, so keeping perspective, and it's really important as a firefighter that we keep perspective, because otherwise we'll just go crazy. Then the kind of strategies are, first, that we need to learn to be brave. And what I think about schools, and I know academics are important, but when you think about what it really takes to be a fulfilled human being and to be joyful on this planet, we need to learn to be brave, right? And think of it like in simple ways. It's like every time you come to a choice point, ask yourself, what is the bravest choice I can make? What is the bravest thing I can do? And this goes simple things, just like asking somebody out when you're 15, right, or 16, or whatever the age is now.
Or saying no.
Or saying no.
Oh
Yeah,
my
exactly.
God. I had that today where I just woke up. Someone has been hammering me, emails, phone calls, text messages, like to the point where if they even would sit back and look at how much they've been, it's not well, that kind of, and me finally, and me getting freaked out, like, oh my gosh, I'm in a corner and a crazed raccoon with rabies is coming at me. And now I'm kind of scared. And then waking up and going, you know what? I'm going to say no. Let me tell you, that takes some bravery.
It does. And go back on your life, and everybody can do this, is think about the important choice points you've come to and how many times you made a choice to be comfortable rather than to be brave. Like not taking difficult classes in college.
Right.
Not asking your boss for a raise. You can go on and on through our lives and see at choice points, we decided to be comfortable rather than be brave. And so I think right now and forever, making that conscious choice to what is the bravest thing I can do is really, really important. The other thing, and I think this is the most important thing we can do right now, is we talk about in the fire service, for every opportunity you have to be brave, you have 100 opportunities to be kind. And what we've learned on the department is people don't remember us for the red trucks and the flashing lights. They remember us because we're kind.
Right.
and being kind right now when people are so stressed and have no idea what the next couple of months are what they hold. It's really important to be kind, and we can be kind in small ways. It doesn't mean big gestures. It can be smiling at somebody, making eye contact with somebody. I shouldn't say smile because they have masks on, but holding a door open, letting people cut in front of you in traffic.
Yes.
Right? It's going to cost you 30 seconds if somebody cuts in front of you in traffic. Not a big deal. So I think it's really making a decision every day. And I talk about the idea of radical kindness, about every day making a conscious decision to be kind, and looking for opportunities to be kind. And again, it's the next part of it is don't expect someone to be kind back. It's not about them. It's about how you want to show up in the world, right? And I want to show up to the extent possible. And none of us are perfect. We all have bad days, but to the extent possible as a kind human being. And then finally, don't expect reciprocity from the universe. Right? It doesn't work that way. Just decide to be kind is really important right now. I think then what I'm struggling with right now at my age is wanting to be continually to be useful, to be able to be making a difference in as small or large a way as I possibly can. And I think when we talk about deaths of despair, I think a lot of it is because people don't feel useful. They don't feel like they're contributing, whether it's to their family or to their community. They just feel like they've been discarded. And so I think finding opportunities to be useful is not only important for your community, and your cohort and your family, but it's immensely important for yourself, right? To know you're part of something. And on the fire service, it can be, it's everybody thinks about breaking down doors and going in with hoses and, bringing children down the stairs. But the firefighter who opens the hydrant, the firefighter who connects the hose, who drives the truck, they're all being useful.
Right.
And I think finding ways to be useful is critically important now. For my grandmother, bless her soul, she sat me down and said, when things are bad, when you're depressed, keep busy. Right?
Yes.
Work in the garden, but don't sit around and feel sorry for yourself. Keep busy. I think the next thing that I talk a lot about, and it's really important now when we're physically distancing, and a lot of this is just simple mental health stuff, is you need to belong to a community. The myth of the Lone Ranger, and especially for men, that I can tough it out of myself. I don't need help, right? I don't need to go see the doctor. All this stuff is just nonsense. The Lone Ranger was a myth. Everything we've done well in this country, we've come together and done it together, right? Whether it's, in my favorite examples are the barn raising in Pennsylvania with the Amish, right? All that kind of stuff is we come together and do stuff together. And the Second World War was the country that's just being transformed from a bunch of cowboys running around to a country working together to fight and ultimately defeat the Nazis, right, and the Japanese. But being in a community, and I'm afraid, being a volunteer fire department is an automatic community, and that's wonderful. But I'm afraid that we're losing a lot of those community opportunities.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's just not good for human beings. We're designed to be together.
I think it's something I know that I've been having a hard time with since social isolation, which I do like to just be with, my close circle and my animals. But I always have been a volunteer that goes to a psych ward, with my dog, or I'm out amongst people, and that's its own little community. And then I have this big community of this network, this podcast network, and that's fantastic. And I love it. And these people are amazing, and I'm in awe of them every day. And that's wonderful. But we can do that remotely. The physical stuff is what I really bringing people out that are suffering with trauma, PTSD, and having them be with my horse. I miss that piece of it. And I noticed the other day I was, being as kind as I can to someone I was getting groceries from and whatever. And I almost started crying. It wasn't like, oh, I'm so wonderful, I'm being so kind. It just made me cry that I was being really nice to someone who was clearly having a bad day.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, I got in the car and I went, all right, what's going on? Because when you're feeling your emotions in your throat, I'm either like, well, my antidepressants aren't working, or they're working overtime, or something's up,
Yeah.
And I went, oh, okay, I know what it is. I'm not getting that touchy feely in your face thing with people that I'm used to getting that with. And that's just the way that it is. So guess what? My dogs, my donkey, and my horse are the beneficiaries of all that love. I got to love on somebody.
Yeah. I think you need to give yourself permission to say, this is a weird time and my emotions are at the surface. And we're missing physical contact. And guess what? We're grieving. We're in deep grief.
Absolutely.
And it's for unspoken reasons that we can't, I find myself being anxious and I can't say why. And then I go, oh yeah, we're in a pandemic, and haven't seen anybody, haven't seen any of my friends. And there's a whole way of living in life that is over, right? And we don't know when we're going to get it back, if ever. So I think it's perfectly acceptable to grieve, to have your emotions at the surface, to occasionally bursting into tears. And I think that's a normal reaction. I think on the fire service, we've been taught, of course, because it's a very, very male culture and a very macho culture, that we've been taught for generations that it's all those things are wrong.
Yes, I know.
And we have to catch up with the science, and we have to catch up with what it truly means to be, and I'm speaking to the guys here, but what it truly means to be a man, that vulnerability, strength, toughness are not mutually exclusive domains, that we have all of them inside of us, and it's okay, right? It's simply okay. And I can't tell you the number of firefighters who I've known through my career who were just these guys that were my heroes. They just could handle everything. And then years later, one of my favorite stories is we had a really bad multi-fatality injury with kids. It was a devastating scene. We did it. We did everything we needed to do. We did the best work we could. We did a kind of stress debriefing the next day, and that went well and all that kind of stuff. And then almost 10 years later, I was standing in the bay of it was late at night, and the fluorescent lights were on, and we were standing in the bay talking. And this firefighter who had been in fire service for almost 40 years just turned to me and said, I thought, out of the blue, said, I thought those kids were all asleep. They just looked so peaceful, right? And he had been struggling with that story for almost 10, 12 years before he let it out. And I think the moral of the story is that when we go through tough times, tragedy and trauma stay with us, right? You don't escape it.
Right.
We need to talk about it. We need to work on dealing with it, because otherwise it's going to haunt us. And when it haunts us, we have another history in the fire service of what do you do when you feel bad? Is you drink.
Right.
Right. And that's what we do. And that doesn't solve any problems. It's not a sign of weakness to get help. It is not a sign of weakness to get help.
Absolutely. And it's so, I've said this on shows before, but I didn't have wonderful experiences with men at all as a kid, and even into my 20s and 30s. And then all of a sudden, in my later 40s and now 50, I am surrounded by men who talk like you do and who share and I still hear my friends say, they're just, men just don't share their feelings and just aren't any good men out there. And I'm like, oh my God, go to mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com.
Right.
Look at these men and listen to them. They are there. And I had someone say, well, Kristin, you're out of touch because that isn't the way it is for everybody else out there.
Sure.
And I thought, well, okay, I can take that. I'm out of touch. Got it. And yet I say all this just to say, I'm so grateful that I get to know men like you that will share, that do notice these things, that do feel, that are the guide for other men who are still stuck in really what society has told them is okay to be.
Yeah, I think so. And I think when you step back, and this sounds a little political, but I think we live in an enormously sexist society where our roles have been assigned since birth. And even, I'm reading this wonderful book called Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent. And you remember that up to the 70s, a woman couldn't get a credit card, right, without her husband signing. She couldn't get a mortgage, right? And that's, if you're 21, that seems like ancient history, but to us, it's like yesterday.
Right.
And I think we've lived in a society where white men are at the top of the pyramid and have done everything. It's about power, and they've done everything possible to retain power. And we can see that going on now in our election. Yeah. But what we don't talk about a lot, but the sacrifices we have to make as human beings, as men, to have these unspoken roles, is that we don't connect well, right? We don't show vulnerability well. We certainly don't show weakness. That other people who don't look like us, who are women or are different cultural backgrounds or different colors, that are talented, that's a threat to us, right? And I think this is also part of the deaths of despair is that it's nowhere near the crisis. I want to make sure this is heard loudly, nowhere near the crisis that African Americans are experiencing or women have experienced. But men have put ourselves in this role where we're kind of numb.
Yes.
Numbed and can't connect to people, can't hold people. It's hard for us to have physical contact with people. It's just a sad commentary on what we've allowed ourselves to become.
It is. And, I just found this out yesterday and I was utterly shocked. I found out that in many, many states, women who want to have their tubes tied as an elective surgery have to get permission from their husband.
Yep.
I can't believe
I know
that is. I'm just like,
it's astonishing. It's astonishing on one level, but when you understand that the tentacles of sexism and the tentacles of racism are still amongst us, they're still structurally, we're structurally surrounded by it, right? And it is. I'm hoping that this time becomes transformative in a lot of these ways for people to wake up and say, "Oh my God, how can that be? How can that be so that you have to get your husband's permission to do anything?" But that's the way it was. That's the way it was, and it was about the white male hierarchy controlling the system, controlling women, controlling people of color. That is the way it's been. Just yesterday news that I think it was that they wanted, you're not able to get birth control prescriptions. It might be birth control, but it might be the abortion drug. I can't remember. You can't have that delivered to your house anymore. You have to go to the pharmacy, right? And the Trump administration was in fighting the idea that you can just have it mailed to you anonymously. And it's about the same thing, it's just about.
No, and you think, I have so friends from everywhere, every color, every country, every sexuality, everything. And And we get in these conversations and I'm like, I understand that as a white woman, yes, that's horrifying. These things like I can't go get my tubes tied, or that
Right.
I can't go have my birth control, mailed to me. However, if I were a Black woman, as an example, forget about it. Like there's not like, I don't even have the luxury of being upset that this is
Totally agree.
happening to me. As a white
Totally
woman, I can
agree.
at least complain about it. I mean,
Totally agree.
I can't.
I know. It's just, and you think of what, the reviews that Kamala Harris got. I mean, the president calling her a monster, right? And all these kind of tropes and dog whistles about Black women. It was just, it's still rampant amongst us. It's still who we are. I listen to James Baldwin a lot. He's one of my favorite writers.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so prescient in the 60s and 70s about what was going on. I'm hoping that we're still in the moment of waking up.
I hope so too. I hope so with all my being. He and Alice Walker, all time favorite authors, no matter what. And they were my favorite authors when I was a little kid and I saw no color. They were just like my favorite authors. And it was just amazing, the clarity and the eyes open and the ability to state this is what's happening. And that in the time that those things were stated, even to deaf ears through the decades. And then here we sit, again with, okay, are we, I mean, we make some strides, not enough. Is it awful enough yet that we're going to really step out of the matrix? Like, how awful does it have to get for people to get thunked on the head and, I'm awake. Okay. I'm awake. No, I'm looking around me. Now I'm awake,
Right. And I think what we need to do as kind of white people is we need to shut up. We need to listen to our culture, right? Listen to listen to the messages that we were given as children, whether explicitly or subtly. We need to listen to the conversations we have and kind of realize the culture we live in, and realize what's going on. Because I think that so much of it is unspoken and so much of it is dog whistle and so much of it is just inherent inside of us that we don't even recognize it. And so I think the first thing we need to do, whether we're talking about racism or we're talking about sexism, is to really listen to the messages we've been taught. And then I think you go, oh my God, where did that come from?
Right.
Where did the idea that women can't be scientists come from? Right. And that's our first step, is to really wake up to those voices.
Absolutely. Well, we've run the gamut on so many things. Yay. Yeah. I love that my week ended with this kind of a conversation, because it's been a rough week. So thank you so much, Hersch, for this.
No problems. Love it. Yeah.
Please tell my listeners where they can find out more about you and where they can find your book.
Sure. So the book, Firefighter Zen, is available at your local bookstores. You can order it. And please go to your local bookstore first, because we need to support the businesses right now, because otherwise there are going to be no small businesses next year. It's also available at Amazon.com. And they can get hold of me at HerschWilson.com, which is HERSCH Wilson.com. And then I'm on Facebook at Hersch Wilson Author.
I love it. Well, I'm so glad we met.
Me too.
And listeners, please think about your first responders that are out there and on the front lines. And please be kind. Hersch, it's been fantastic.
Thank you so much. It's been great. It's been a wonderful hour.
And everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Mental Health News Radio.
But will you ride the low, low, lows with me? Will you ride the low, low, lows with me?
One thing you can always count on at Mental Health News Radio Network and my show is that there will always be dogs around. Why? They are natural healers, excellent for your mental health. The original therapy dog Miles has something to say in just a moment. For now, please check out all of our amazing shows at mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com and all your favorite podcast apps. Until next time, I'm Kristin Walker, and thank you for listening.
Me tonight, and I can ride the low, low, lows with me. I can ride the low, low, lows with me till my vision clears up.